Hey everyone, welcome back to Easy English Conversation, the place where English feels natural, simple, and real. I'm Emily.
And I'm Jack. We're really glad you're spending a few minutes of your day with us.
If you're someone who wants to speak English more naturally and confidently, you're definitely in the right place.
Absolutely. And today we're going to talk about two tiny English words that create surprisingly big confusion for a lot of learners.
Yes, seriously. They're short, simple-looking words, but people mix them up all the time.
Those two words are either and neither.
Exactly. Maybe you've heard sentences like, I don't like coffee either, or neither do I. And maybe you've wondered, what exactly is the difference?
Or maybe you've been in a conversation and suddenly thought, wait, should I say either or neither here?
Yes, that moment of panic when your brain freezes for 2 seconds.
It happens to everyone. Even people who speak English very well sometimes hesitate with these words.
But don't worry, by the end of this conversation, you'll clearly understand how to use either and neither naturally in everyday English.
And the best part is, we're not going to make this feel like a boring grammar class.
No complicated textbook explanations today.
Instead, we'll use real-life examples, natural conversations, and simple explanations.
So, if you're listening while walking, studying, cooking, or just relaxing, stay with us because this is going to be fun.
All right, let's start with the most basic question. What does either actually mean?
Good question. The easiest way to understand either is this. It usually refers to one of two choices.
Exactly. For example, imagine someone asks, do you want tea or coffee? You could answer, I'll take either.
Which means you're okay with both options.
Right, you're basically saying, I don't mind, both choices are fine for me.
Now imagine a different situation. Your friend asks you, should we watch a movie or go for a walk? And you reply, I'm fine with either.
Again, you're saying both options are acceptable.
Exactly. Now let's talk about neither because this word is almost the opposite.
Yes, while either means one of the two options is okay,
Neither means not one and not the other.
in other words, you don't want both options.
Let's imagine someone asks, do you want pizza or burgers? And you answer, I want neither.
Which probably means you're on a diet.
Or maybe you just ate already.
Right, but the important thing is that neither means zero choice.
Exactly. Either equals one of the two is okay. Neither equals none of them.
When you think about it like that, it's actually very simple.
Yes, but things become a little more interesting when we start using these words in real conversations.
For example, when someone says something negative,
Right. Let's imagine someone says, I don't like spicy food.
if you feel the same way, you might respond, I don't like it either.
Exactly. That's a very common pattern in English. When the first sentence is negative, we often use either at the end.
Let's try another example. I don't watch horror movies.
I don't watch them either.
Perfect. But here's a mistake many learners make. They sometimes say, I don't watch them too.
Yes, but that sounds incorrect in English.
Because too is usually used with positive sentences.
Exactly. For example, I like ice cream. You can respond, me too.
But if the sentence is negative, I don't like ice cream, then we say, I don't like it either.
So here's a quick rule that might help you remember. Positive sentence, to. Negative sentence, either.
That's a very useful rule for everyday conversation.
But now let's introduce another expression that sounds very natural in English.
You mean neither do I?
Exactly. Imagine someone says, I don't like waking up early.
Oh, that's easy. You could respond, neither do I.
Yes, that's something a lot of people would agree with.
Especially on weekends.
Right. But grammatically, what's happening here is interesting. Instead of repeating the whole sentence, you simply say, neither do I.
Which means I also don't like waking up early.
Exactly. It's shorter, smoother, and sounds very natural.
But in everyday conversation, many people say something even simpler.
Yes, they say, me neither.
For example, I don't like rainy weather.
Me neither.
Very simple.
Very natural.
And you'll hear it everywhere.
Movies,
TV shows,
conversations between friends.
even in podcasts like this one.
So far, we've talked about the basic idea of either and neither. But now let's go a little deeper and look at how these words appear in everyday conversations.
Yes, because when you start noticing them, you'll realize people use these words all the time in English.
Exactly. And sometimes they appear in very simple situations. For example, imagine two friends talking about food.
Let's act that out. I'm not hungry.
Honestly, I'm not hungry either.
And suddenly both people realize maybe they should just get coffee instead.
Right. That's a perfect example of how naturally either can appear at the end of a negative sentence.
But here's something interesting. Sometimes either appears in the middle of a sentence, not just at the end.
Good point. For example, you can sit on either side of the table.
Which means both sides are okay.
Exactly. Another example could be, you can choose either option.
Again, meaning one of the two choices is fine.
So when we use either like this, we're usually talking about two possible options.
But now let's switch to neither, because this is where things become interesting.
Yes. Imagine someone asks, do you prefer summer or winter?
That's a tough question.
Well, imagine you don't like either season.
Then you could say, I like neither.
Exactly. That means you don't like summer and you also don't like winter.
Maybe you prefer spring,
Or autumn.
but definitely not the other two.
Now let's introduce a structure that many learners see in textbooks.
You mean either or?
Yes, this structure helps us talk about two possibilities. For example, you can either stay here or come with us.
That sentence gives two choices. Choice number 1, stay here. Choice number 2, come with us.
Exactly. Here's another example. You can either call me or send me a message.
Both options are available.
And people use this structure all the time in real life. Imagine a teacher talking to a student. You can either finish the assignment today or submit it tomorrow.
Students usually choose tomorrow.
Yes, most of the time. But the structure stays the same. Either or.
Now let's look at the opposite structure.
That would be neither nor.
This structure means both options are not true.
For example, he likes neither coffee nor tea.
So he doesn't like coffee and he doesn't like tea.
Exactly. Another example. She is neither tired nor upset.
So she's not tired and she's not upset.
Right.
But there's something important to mention here. Sometimes in everyday conversation, some people don't always use nor.
That's true. Sometimes people say something like, he likes neither coffee or tea.
Even though many people say it like that, the correct grammar is still neither nor.
Yes, if you want to sound more correct, try to remember neither nor.
But don't stress too much. Native speakers themselves sometimes break grammar rules in casual speech.
Exactly. Communication is always more important than perfection.
Now I think this is a good moment to talk about another common structure.
You mean either of and neither of?
Yes.
This structure appears when we talk about two people or two things in a group. Let's imagine a simple example. You have two books. You could say, you can read either of the books.
Meaning both books are good choices.
Exactly. Now let's use neither of.
Neither of the books is interesting.
So, both books are boring.
Haha, that's a very honest opinion.
Yes. Here's another example. Either of my friends can help you.
Meaning both friends are capable of helping.
Right. Now with neither of. Neither of my friends is available today.
So both friends are busy.
Exactly.
This structure is very common in daily English.
especially talking about people.
Let's create a small story using these structures.
All right, imagine two coworkers discussing lunch plans.
Do you want pizza or sandwiches?
Honestly, I want neither.
Oh, really? Why?
I'm trying to eat healthy today.
That's impressive.
But what about you?
I'm fine with either.
That means you definitely want pizza.
Okay, maybe a little.
And that's a perfect example of how these words appear naturally in conversation.
Yes, people don't sit and think about grammar rules when they speak.
They just use the words naturally.
And that's exactly what we want listeners to achieve.
To understand the pattern so well that it becomes automatic.
Now, before we continue, let's talk about a very common learner mistake.
Yes, this one happens a lot. Sometimes learners say something like, I don't like it too.
But that sounds strange in English.
Because after a negative sentence, we use either, not to.
Let's compare them again. Positive sentence, I love chocolate.
Me too.
Negative sentence, I don't love chocolate.
I don't love it either.
That small difference is very important.
Yes, and once you remember this rule, it becomes much easier.
But now let's look at another situation where learners get confused.
You mean when someone replies with, neither do I?
Exactly. For example, I don't enjoy long meetings.
Neither do I.
That's something many workers would agree with.
Definitely. But the structure here is interesting.
Yes, because the sentence uses neither plus auxiliary verb plus subject.
For example, neither do I. Neither am I. Neither can I.
Let's look at some examples. I can't swim.
Neither can I.
I'm not tired.
Neither am I.
Very natural responses.
And the more you hear them, the more comfortable they will feel.
That's why listening practice is so important.
Exactly, because grammar rules become easier when you hear them in real conversations.
And hopefully this conversation is helping you hear how either and neither work naturally.
Yes, and we still have many more examples and situations to explore. All right, let's continue exploring more situations where these words appear naturally, because the more examples you hear, the easier it becomes to remember them.
Exactly. Language learning is often about patterns. Once you see the pattern again and again, your brain starts recognizing it automatically.
So let's imagine a very common situation. Two friends are talking about movies.
All right, I'll start. I didn't enjoy that movie at all.
Honestly, I didn't enjoy it either.
So now both people agree the movie wasn't good.
Yes, and this type of response happens all the time in conversations. When someone makes a negative statement, the other person often responds using either.
Here's another example. I can't understand this math problem.
I can't understand it either.
Now both people are confused.
Maybe they both need a teacher.
Probably. But now let's look at another situation where either appears in a slightly different way.
You mean when we use it while giving instructions or choices?
Exactly. Imagine a teacher speaking to students. You can either work alone or work with a partner.
That sentence gives two choices.
Yes, and the student can choose one of them.
This structure is very common in everyday English. For example, you can either start now or finish it later.
Another example might be, we can either watch a movie or go out for dinner.
That sounds like a difficult decision.
It really depends on how hungry you are.
True, but the structure stays the same. Either or.
Now let's switch back to neither, because this word can sometimes sound a little stronger.
Yes, when someone uses neither, they are clearly rejecting both options.
For example, neither answer is correct,
That means both answers are wrong.
Which is never good news in an exam.
Definitely not. Here's another example. Neither restaurant is open today.
So both restaurants are closed.
That might force you to cook at home.
Or order food online.
Exactly. But now let's look at another natural response structure using neither.
You mean when someone says something negative and we respond with neither do I?
Yes. Let's try a few examples. I don't enjoy waking up early.
Neither do I.
I'm not interested in that TV show.
Neither am I.
Perfect. Notice how the verb changes depending on the sentence.
Exactly. For example, I can't drive. Response, neither can I. I'm not ready. Response, neither am I. I don't understand. Response, neither do I.
Perfect. Notice how the verb changes depending on the sentence.
Exactly. For example, I can't drive. Response, neither can I. I'm not ready. Response, neither am I. I don't understand. Response, neither do I.
These patterns might seem complicated at first, but after hearing them a few times, they start feeling natural.
And once you start using them in real conversations, they become part of your speaking habits.
Now, let's talk about something interesting: tone and emotion when using these words.
Yes, because depending on how you say them, they can express agreement, surprise, or even humor.
For example, imagine someone says, "I hate traffic."
Me neither. Wait, actually, I mean me too.
Yes, that happens sometimes when people mix up their words.
But normally you would say me too.
Right. But if the sentence was negative, "I don't like traffic,"
Then you could say me neither.
this type of response feels very natural in casual conversations.
Now let's imagine another everyday situation. Two coworkers are discussing a difficult project.
"I don't think this task is easy."
I don't think it's easy either,
Now both people agree the work is difficult.
which probably means they'll need coffee.
Lots of coffee.
Or maybe a vacation.
That would help too. But the important thing here is how naturally either fits at the end of a negative sentence.
Yes, and once learners notice this pattern, it becomes easy to copy.
Another interesting situation happens when people talk about preferences.
For example, do you prefer dogs or cats?
"I like either."
Meaning you like both animals.
Exactly. But if someone doesn't like animals, they could say, "I like neither."
That person probably prefers quiet houses.
Yes, but this shows how either and neither help us express opinions clearly.
Another interesting point is that sometimes either appears in negative sentences, even when we're not responding to someone.
Good point. For example, "I didn't see him at the meeting either."
That means someone else didn't see him, and now you're adding the same information,
Exactly. Here's another example. "She didn't call me either."
which suggests that she didn't call someone else as well.
So either can connect similar negative ideas in a conversation.
That's why it's such a useful word.
Yes, and once learners understand these patterns, they start sounding much more natural in English.
Because native speakers use these words without even thinking about them.
And the goal is to reach that same level of comfort.
So if you're listening right now, try repeating some of these examples in your mind.
Or even say them out loud.
Practice helps your brain remember the patterns.
And before you know it, using either and neither will feel completely natural. All right, let's make things a little more interesting now. Instead of only explaining rules, let's imagine some real-life situations where these words naturally appear in conversation.
That's a great idea, because when you hear grammar inside stories, it becomes much easier to remember.
Exactly. So imagine two friends planning their weekend.
Do you want to go to the beach or watch a movie?
Honestly, I'm fine with either.
That means both options sound good.
But imagine the friend responds like this: "I want neither. I just want to sleep all day."
That's probably the most honest answer ever.
Right? Sometimes doing nothing is the best plan.
But this example clearly shows the difference.
Yes, either means you accept one of the two choices. Neither means you reject both.
Simple but powerful.
Now, let's imagine another situation. Two coworkers are talking about their boss.
I don't think the boss liked my presentation.
Honestly, he didn't like mine either.
Now they both feel a little less alone.
Exactly. And that's another important reason people use either. It shows shared experience.
Yes, it connects people in conversation.
Now, let's try another situation. Two students are studying together for an exam.
I can't solve this question.
I can't either.
That's the moment when both students realize they might need help.
Or maybe they need a break.
Definitely a break.
But notice how natural neither can I sounds in that situation.
Yes, it's a very quick and natural way to show agreement with a negative sentence.
And there's another very casual way people say this.
You mean me neither?
Exactly. For example, I don't like extremely spicy food.
Me neither.
Short, simple, and very natural.
Actually, these small responses are very important in conversations because conversations are not just about speaking, they're about reacting.
Yes, responding naturally makes your English sound more fluent.
Now, let's look at another interesting situation involving either. Imagine someone asking for help.
For example, should I send an email or make a phone call?
You can either send the email or call them directly.
This sentence gives two possible actions.
And the person can choose whichever option they prefer.
This structure is extremely common in daily English. For example, you can either start now or finish it tomorrow.
Or something like, we can either take a taxi or walk.
Walking sounds healthier.
But taxis are faster.
True, but again, the structure stays the same. Either or.
Now, let's look at a powerful sentence using neither nor.
All right, he is neither angry nor disappointed.
That means he feels neither emotion.
Exactly. Another example. This phone is neither cheap nor expensive.
Meaning it's somewhere in the middle.
Yes, these structures are very common in both spoken and written English.
Now, let's do something fun. Let's imagine a small, funny conversation.
Okay, two friends walk into a restaurant. The waiter says,
Would you like coffee or tea?
friend number one says, I'll take either. Friend number two says, I want neither. I need juice.
And the waiter probably thinks, these customers are confusing.
Maybe just a little, but again, the meaning is clear.
Yes, one person accepts both options, the other rejects both.
And this is exactly how these words work in everyday communication.
So, if you're listening right now, try making your own sentences with either and neither.
For example, think about food. You could say, I like either pasta or pizza.
Or you could say, I like neither pasta nor pizza.
Although that would surprise many people.
Yes, because most people love at least one of those.
Now, before we finish today's conversation, let's quickly review the most important ideas.
First, either usually refers to one of two choices.
Second, neither means not one and not the other.
Third, in negative responses, we often use either at the end of the sentence.
For example, I don't understand either.
Fourth, we can respond using neither do I, neither can I, or me neither.
And finally, remember these two structures, either or and neither nor.
Once you become comfortable with these patterns, your English conversations will sound much more natural.
All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of today's conversation.
We hope this discussion helped you understand either and neither more clearly.
And remember, the best way to learn English is to listen, practice, and use it in real conversations.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and share it with someone who is learning English.
And if you want more simple and practical English conversations like this one,
make sure you stay connected with Easy English Conversation.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next conversation.
Take care and keep practicing your English.